Most people believe burnout comes from working too much, from long hours, from busy schedules, from full calendars. But that's only part of the story. The truth is, burnout comes from carrying too much emotionally for too long, from holding responsibility that no one sees, from being mentally on even when your body is tired, from absorbing other people's needs without releasing your own. Emotional overload doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like pushing through. Sometimes it looks like smiling while you're running on empty. And many people who experience emotional overload don't even realize what's happening because they've normalized it. If you're listening to this, there's a strong chance you are the dependable one. The one people rely on. The one who shows up even when it's hard. The one who handles things quietly. At work, people come to you with problems. At home, people lean on you for support. In relationships, you often become the emotional anchor. And because you can handle it all, people assume you always will. But capability does not mean capacity. Just because you can carry it doesn't mean you should, or that it doesn't affect you. Over time, consistency, being the strong one, creates invisible exhaustion. Not physical tiredness alone, but emotional fatigue. Let's talk about emotional labor, because it's rarely named yet deeply felt. Emotional labor is managing other people's feelings, making others feel comfortable, regulating your reactions so situations don't escalate, showing patience when you're depleted, listening when you're already full, being calm, pleasant, and professional no matter what's happening on the inside of you. If you work in service, caregiving, leadership, or any people-facing role, emotional labor is part of your daily life. You don't just perform tasks, you hold space. You listen, you reassure, you de-escalate, you comfort, you encourage, and often you do all of this while setting your own feelings aside. And that adds up. The nervous system was not designed to be on all the time. When you spend day after day tending to others without recovery, your body stays in a low-level state of stress. Not panic, not crisis, not consistent alertness. That's why emotional overload often feels confusing. You may think, I shouldn't be this tired, or other people have it worse, or I don't even know why I feel overwhelmed. But your system knows, and it starts speaking through irritability over small things, difficulty focusing, forgetfulness, lack of motivation, emotional numbness, feeling disconnected from yourself. These are not personality flaws. They are signals. Signals that you've been given more than you've been replenishing. People who care for others are often the last ones to care for themselves. Because care feels natural. Because giving feels purposeful. Because helping gives meaning. But there's a quiet cost to being needed all the time. You may feel guilty resting. You may feel uneasy doing nothing. You may feel uncomfortable asking for help. Because somewhere along the way, you've learned that your value comes from what you provide, from how reliable you are, from how much you do, from how well you hold everything together. And when that becomes your identity, rest can feel unsafe. Now, there's a difference between being tired and being depleted. Being tired means you need sleep. Being depleted means you need restoration. Sleep alone doesn't fix emotional depletion. You can sleep 8 hours and still wake up exhausted because your mind and your nervous system haven't had a chance to reset. Depletion happens when you suppress emotions instead of processing them. You ignore your own needs repeatedly. You stay in helper mode without breaks. You don't feel seen, supported, or poured into. And the longer depletion goes unaddressed, the heavier life begins to feel. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. And you're not failing, you are responding. Let me say this clearly. Feeling overwhelmed does not mean you're failing at life. It means you've been responding to demands without enough support. You didn't suddenly become incapable. You became overloaded. And overload is not solved by trying harder. It's solved by changing how much you carry and how often you rest. Your body isn't betraying you. It's communicating with you. And the most powerful thing you can do is listen without judgment. Take a moment now. Notice your breath. Notice where you feel tension in your body. Ask yourself quietly, what have I been carrying that no one sees? You don't need to answer it out loud. Just acknowledge it. Because awareness is the first step toward balance. And from here, we begin learning how to care for others without losing ourselves in the process. Let's talk about balance, honestly. Because many people feel like they're failing at balance, when in reality, balance was never meant to look the way it's been sold to us. Balance is not perfection. Balance is not having everything handled at the same time. Balance is not living without stress. Balance is discernment. It's the ability to notice when something is pulling too much from you and to respond with wisdom instead of guilt. And faith reminds us of this truth. You were never created to carry everything alone. Balance was never meant to be equal. There are seasons when work requires more from you. There are seasons when family needs more from you. There are seasons when your spirit needs your attention most. Even in scriptures, we see seasons of action and seasons of rest. Growth happens in both. If you are in a season where things feel heavy, it does not mean you are out of alignment. It may mean you are being invited to slow down and listen more closely. Balance is not about forcing everything into order. It's about responding to what matters most in the moment. Now, faith teaches rhythm and not rush. The world teaches urgency while faith teaches rhythm. The world says, do more, push harder, stay busy. While faith says, be still, listen, trust. Rest is not something you earn after exhaustion. Rest is something you are invited into. When you ignore rest, you don't become stronger. You become disconnected. And often overwhelm is not a sign that you're doing too much, but that you're doing too much without being spiritually replenished. Balance begins with awareness. Awareness of your limits, of your energy, and of when your spirit feels unsettled. Now pay attention to the moments when you feel rushed for no clear reason, when you feel tension in your body, when you feel disconnected from joy, and when you feel resistant to stillness. These moments are not failures, they are invitations. They're invitations to pause, to pray, and to breathe. Faith invites you to trust that slowing down does not mean falling behind. Now take a breath here. Ask quietly, God, what are you asking me to release in this season? You may not get an immediate answer, and that's okay. Sometimes the clarity comes after the pause, not before. Balance grows when you allow yourself to be led, not driven. You are not meant to carry life at full speed. And there is a difference between faith and striving. Striving says, if I stop, everything will fall apart. And faith says, if I rest, I will be restored. Now, balance comes when you stop measuring your worth by output and start anchoring it in identity. You are valuable because you exist, not because of how much you can do. Because many people struggle with boundaries, not because they don't understand them, but because they feel spiritually conflicted about them. They worry, am I being selfish? Am I being unkind? Am I letting people down? But boundaries are not about rejection. Boundaries are about stewardship. Stewardship of your time, of your energy, and of the life God entrusted to you. You cannot pour endlessly and expect to remain whole. Even Jesus withdrew. Even Jesus rested. Even Jesus stepped away from crowds. Not because he didn't care, but because he understood the importance of renewal. If rest was molded in faith, why do we feel guilty for needing it? Boundaries are not a lack of love. They are a form of wisdom. And guilt often appears when you've been trained to overgive, when your identity is tied to being helpful, when your worth feels connected to being available, when you're used to being the one who fixes things. But guilt does not mean you're doing something wrong. Often guilt is just the discomfort of breaking an old pattern. Now, faith teaches us that obedience sometimes feels uncomfortable, especially when it requires change. A boundary doesn't need to be harsh to be firm. It can sound like, I need to pray about this before committing. I don't have the capacity for that right now. I'm honoring rest today. Or I need to protect my peace. You don't owe long explanations. You do not need to justify your limits. Your no creates your yes to matter. Faith invites surrender. Surrender of control, surrender of perfection, surrender of the need to be everything to everyone. You are not failing by stepping back. You are trusting that God can handle what you cannot. And when you release what was never yours to carry, peace follows. Now pause here. Place your hand over your heart and say quietly, I release what is not mine to carry. Now breathe. Trust that caring for yourself honors the life you were given. Boundaries do not push people away. They allow you to show up whole. And wholeness is what truly serves others best. Structure is often misunderstood. Many people think structure is restrictive, rigid, cold, overwhelming. But in truth, healthy structure is an act of self-respect. Structure is not about controlling your life. It's about supporting it. And faith reminds us of this principle. Everything that grows strong has a foundation. Overwhelm doesn't come from doing too much alone. It comes from doing too much without clarity. When your days blend together, when your work spills into home, when your rest feels unplanned or accidental, your mind never gets to settle. Instead, it stays alert, anticipating, remembering, managing. Structure gives your nervous system permission to exhale. It tells your mind, you don't have to hold everything at once. Now let's release this belief right now. Structure does not mean adding more tasks, becoming stricter with yourself, turning life into a checklist. Structure means creating boundaries around your energy, deciding when you are on and when you are off, designing days that honor your capacity. Faith teaches order, not overload. Order brings peace. Overload brings confusion. Now, your routine can be sacred. Not rushed routine, not pressure-filled routine, but intentional rhythm. When you wake up with intention, when you end your day with closure, when you create predictable moments of rest, you are telling your spirit, I am safe, I am supported. Structure becomes a container for peace. Instead of scheduling your day by time alone, try scheduling by energy. Ask yourself, when do I feel most focused? When do I feel drained? When do I need quiet? Then align tasks accordingly. This honors your design, not just your responsibilities. Faith reminds us that wisdom includes listening to how we were created. And one of the most powerful structures you can create is ending your day on purpose, not collapsing into rest, not carrying tomorrow into tonight, but gently closing the day. You might write down what you completed, release what you didn't get done, pray or reflect briefly, and take 3 deep breaths. This signals completion, and completion is restful. When you create structure, you are telling yourself, I trust myself enough to protect my peace. Structure is not pressure, it's protection. And protection allows you to show up whole again and again. Here is a question that changes everything. Who are you when no one needs anything from you? For many people, this question feels uncomfortable because when your life has been centered around responsibility, stillness can feel unfamiliar, even unsafe. But faith reminds us you are more than what you provide. If you've always been the dependable one, the helper, the caregiver, your sense of worth may quietly be tied to being needed. So when there's space for silence, time, you may feel restless. This doesn't mean something is wrong. It means your soul is learning how to exist without performing. Many people avoid rest because they associate it with doing nothing. But rest is not empty. Rest is where healing happens, creativity returns, clarity forms, and faith deepens. Rest allows you to hear yourself again. And often, the voice you've been ignoring is the one that needs attention most. Faith invites us to abide, not strive. To be present, not productive. You do not need to earn moments of joy. You do not need to justify quiet. You do not need to explain why you're resting. Being is enough. Reclaiming yourself does not require drastic change. It begins softly. You might sit quietly without distraction. Take a walk without purpose. Listen to music without multitasking. Journal without a goal. These moments rebuild connection. They remind you that you exist beyond obligation. Now pause here and place your hand over your heart and ask yourself quietly, what part of me has been ignored? Now listen without judgment. The answer may come as a feeling, not words, and that's okay. Awareness is healing. A balanced life is not one where everyone is satisfied. It is one where you are not lost. You were never meant to disappear into responsibility. You were meant to live fully with care, joy, rest, and purpose. Reclaiming yourself is not selfish. It is alignment. Take a deep breath. Remind yourself, I am allowed to exist beyond what I do. And let that truth settle. There comes a moment in every season of growth when something must be released. Not because you're giving up, and not because you're failing, but because what once fit no longer does. Many people carry an unspoken belief. If I don't do it, it won't get done. If I don't hold it together, everything will fall apart. If I stop, I'll disappoint someone. But faith invites a different truth. You are not the source, you are the vessel. Some of the pressure you feel was never assigned to you. It was assumed. It was picked up over time, accepted quietly. You may have become the fixer, the organizer, the emotional support, the reliable one. And because you showed up so well, you were handed more. Not out of malice, but out of habit. The problem isn't that you care. The problem is that you've been caring without limits. Surrender is not weakness. Surrender is wisdom. Faith teaches us that letting go is not abandonment. It's trust. Trust that what you release will be held by something greater than you. When you try to carry everything, you rob yourself of peace. When you release what isn't yours, you create space for restoration. You are allowed to lay things down. Asking for help does not mean you are incapable. It means you understand sustainability. Delegation is a skill. Support is a resource. Rest is a requirement. You were never meant to do life alone. Even the strongest leaders need replenishment. Perfection is exhausting. It convinces you that mistakes are unacceptable, rest is indulgent, and control equals safety. Faith reminds us that grace fills the gaps. You don't have to do everything perfectly to do it meaningfully. Release the pressure to be flawless. Presence matters more. Now pause here. Picture yourself holding everything you feel responsible for. Now imagine placing some of it down. You don't need to decide what happens next. Just let it go. Feel the space that creates. That space is where peace enters. Now that you've released, it's time to choose. Not what's expected, not what's familiar, but what aligns. Choosing a balanced life is not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. Many people live for approval. They shape their days around what others need. They silence themselves to keep the peace. They say yes when their body says no. But alignment asks a different question. Does this honor who I am becoming? Now, faith teaches that obedience to truth brings peace, even when it brings discomfort. You don't need to explain your alignment to anyone. Peace is your confirmation. You rest without apology. You design life with care. You stop reacting and start responding. You move from survival to stewardship. And stewardship is holy work. Not every season looks productive. Some seasons look quiet. Some look reflective. Some look slow. Faith reminds us that roots grow underground before fruit appears. You are not behind. You are being prepared. Here is a quiet promise you can make. I will no longer abandon myself to meet everyone else's needs. This does not make you selfish. It makes you whole. And wholeness serves others better than exhaustion ever could. Now pause. Place your hand on your heart and say softly, I choose a life that honors me. And breathe. Let that choice settle. As we close, I want you to remember this. You were never meant to be drained by the life you're building. You were meant to live it fully, gently, intentionally. The work you do matters. The people you care for matter. But you matter too. Balance is not about doing less. It's about living aligned. Rest is not quitting. It's resetting. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges to sustainability. Faith is not about carrying more. It's about trusting deeper. You are allowed to rise without burnout. You are allowed to succeed without losing yourself. You are allowed to rest while you grow. Take one more deep breath and step forward, not overwhelmed, but supported.